Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next episode in this series in which we are looking at the roots of stewardship as well as our response and what stewardship is all about. And so our episode today, we are once again with Father David Garcia, speaking this time in regards to one of the three traditional levels of stewardship. So often we hear about it in regards to time, talent, and treasure. And today we're going to be speaking with Father David Garcia on the aspect of our treasure, of our offering and how that works. And so, Father, this idea of giving of our treasure, giving of that financial side of our life, this is not a new teaching in the church, but it's actually an ancient teaching that goes back into the old Jewish roots of our faith. Sure. That it speaks of something called a tithe. Now, in our modern world, we kind of warped this idea, but what was the tithe at that time?
Well, the biblical tithe, the traditional biblical tithe, was considered the first 10%. In other words, your best. In those days, of course, it was an agricultural community on the whole. And so you had your crops that you would, be harvesting, and you had your animals. Those were the sources of wealth that people had at that time. And so the biblical tithe was, I give back to God 10% of everything I have, 10% what I'm having, but I give him the best 10%. So the first part of the crop, the part that's the best, the first animal that comes out of, the baby goat or the baby calf or whatever it is that comes out, I give those to God. So that was a tradition because God deserves the best and because I am obligated because God gave them to me in the first place. Now, as Scripture developed and as we move into the New Testament, then we have in the Acts of the Apostles and in the letters of Paul, we have other ways of tithing. The Acts of the Apostles was pretty radical because the early Christian community, it said, shared everything that they had with each other. They simply put it at the feet of the apostles, and then the apostles distributed as people needed. Now, that's pretty radical. But that was the initial Christian community, the first Christian community, in terms of really living the faith. Now, did they really do that? Did they really, continue that for a long time? We don't know, but we do know that there is a distinct moment in Scripture in which it said the people would lay what they had at the feet of the apostles to be given to those who needed, to be given to the community. There's another piece in Paul's letter where he says that he took a collection in one of his communities, I believe in Greece, for the Church of Jerusalem, because he had heard and he had been told that the Church of Jerusalem was suffering persecution. Many of them were being thrown out of their jobs, of their homes. They were in jail or whatever, and their families were suffering. And so Paul said, we can do something. We're okay right now. Let's take this collection and send it to them because they're suffering. Who knows if in the future we might be suffering and we might need somebody else's help. So that was that whole idea of the Catholic in terms of universal, the church, that we need to care for everyone, not just ourselves. So there's plenty of basis in the New Testament as well as the Old Testament for giving. I think we today try to use, that 10% tithe as something that is numerical, 10%, something that we can say, okay, if I were to give my 10%, what would it be? So, then you kind of figure, this is my income. My income is X number of thousands of dollars a year. This is what I make. So if I take 10% and I give that to charity, how is that done? The church usually says 5% for the church, 5% for other charities, because people are always asking you for something. The Boy Scouts need this, the Little League needs that, some organization that you belong to is trying to do a fundraiser. All of that is the other 5%. So most people, if they look at their giving and they look at their income and they look at 5%, they say, oh my God, I'm not even close to 5%. Okay, fine, no problem. But all the church is asking you to do is move in that direction. Do what you can and make the adjustments, and you'll find that you will have plenty to take care of yourself if you are a good steward.
I've always found, at least in my own life, that the generosity that I offer repays itself in some way. It may not be monetary that comes back to me, but I have always found the more generous and willing I am to give, in some way God finds a way to repay us for that. which in a way begins that cycle of, well, how much do I owe to God? Well, every time I give, he gives me back. And so it's that continual give and take to some degree. I think it's very interesting because many of our parishes, we encounter these mission appeals, collections from the USCCB, from Vatican, and all these different, a lot of times we kind of grumble about it. We hear the grumbling in our parishes. But you made that connection to St. Paul, making that collection from one of his other communities to give to the community in Jerusalem out of their need of what's going on and what is happening. Because I think sometimes we get so caught up in our modern world that what we're dealing with, what we're encountering, what we're seeing in the church is new. But is there anything ever really new in a 2,000-year-old history of the church?
Yeah.
Most of what we're encountering is not new.
Yeah.
We're still needing to assist and be assisted. It doesn't really fit with the financial side, but I've always, with vocations, it's close to my heart. I know it's close to yours. It surprised me when the Archdiocese told us as priests that in the history of the Archdiocese of San Antonio, we have always been a missionary diocese. That we have always needed the help of outside groups and dioceses to keep our churches open here. And so in a way, I think we are very good financially here, but we're not always good as vocationally. But that can be part of that give and take of the tithing to some degree. They're giving a priest sometimes, and we're helping a lot of those communities and collections in financially of our own hearts where we do have more available to us in the financial.
I think that some of the grumbling is justified. Okay, I'll tell you that. And the reason I tell you that is that in some parishes, not all, they have a collection and everybody puts in for the collection. And then once a month, we have a maintenance of the church collection. Excuse me, I gave my tithe already to the parish. Why do I now have to? That tithe to the parish should be everything that the parish does, really. And that any other second collection should be for a special a particular need of the universal church or the diocesan church. Because we have to realize, as Catholics, we are gathered around our parish, but we are gathered around our bishop. And the bishop, as the head of the diocese, is the center of our faith. We gather around him. And the bishop has many needs that he's trying to accommodate beyond the parishes. And so, yes, when the Archdiocese asks us for this special collection or that special collection, justified, we should do it, we should be generous, but we should understand it. So if there's a collection for whatever, Catholic Charities or for the seminary, tell me just one little thing in 1 minute about the seminary so that I understand what I'm giving. And I think that's very important. We have the people have the right to the information about what they're giving to. But I don't think that people have to be penny-anted all the time saying, okay, second collection is for the air condition, and then next week the second collection is going to be for the building fund, and then the next week after that the second collection is going, go on forever, Be good stewards. We don't need second collections for the parish. We need them for the universal church. So the Holy Father asks us to do the Peter's Pence because then he can help dioceses and areas of the church in need. Or we have the Catholic Relief Services collection because they help 110 countries in the world, the poorest countries of the world, through us in the Catholic Church of the United States and making a difference in people's lives. So you do those things because you're Catholic and because it's part of the universal church. But if you're a good steward and if your parish is practicing stewardship, you do not have to hear about money all the time. I think once a year for a couple of weeks, we talk about it, we explain it, we do it, and then people have to make a decision. It's their decision, what they do, not yours. The priest can suggest, the priest can give them ideas, the priest can tell them, this is the parish, this is what we're doing, and I hope, those of you that want to get involved more and learn more about the parish and be helping us, fine, we need that, etc. So I'm giving you all the information you need for you to make decisions on how you're going to support it.
I think that's also very important because I hear it a lot of times from our brother priests. Well, I don't want to ask anymore. I don't want to propose this next thing because the people are overtaxed. They're giving already as too much. And and it's been a phrase that has stuck with me since I've known you as a priest, as a brother priest, that we're not called to tell the laity how generous they can or cannot be. That it has to be their heart. It has to be their willingness to give. And as you said, I can propose what this next thing will be, but I can't say, well, I already know y'all are overtaxed. I'm not going to ask y'all for this.
Right.
I have to give you the opportunity to be able to give or to be a part of this universalness of our church. And it hopefully becomes a theme throughout these videos, this idea of our Catholic identity, of Catholic being universal, that our connections to our tithing, our finances, is a connection to the larger church as a whole. That it is a connection to how I support not just my little diocese of St. Jerome or my diocese of Our Lady of Guadalupe parish, but that that parish is not a diocese of its own, that doesn't exist solely outside of itself. I know in my parish of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and I don't know how many of my parishioners still know this, they have traditionally helped the Our Lady of Guadalupe at El Paso Street, one of our poorer parishes in the diocese, monthly with a donation to their church. And so it helps in that Catholic identity, recognizing we are a blessed parish in many ways. I can help this other community. Even when things are struggling for us, it's not I cut that completely, but I still have this connection to them. And so I think our tithing is meant to be a part of that. That in recognition that, and I think part of it also becomes a trust factor to some degree. That I am trusting my parish, my diocese, my pastor, that what I am giving is not going to be abused. It's not going to be mishandled.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes is a harder one with the way church has been the last few years, but I think it's very important to still have that trust.
And I think the key is to be as transparent as we can.
Yep.
And to explain to the people. So every time I would have a second collection for the diocese or for the universal church or for whatever, I would take 30 seconds to a minute to just explain it. I've been in so many parishes where they just say, the collection from and please be generous. It's like, what? What is that? What did you just say? I don't even know what it is. Okay, I got an extra $1. Here you go. Okay. If I understand it, I can tell you, in 30 seconds to a minute, you could explain what this collection does and who it affects and how it helps people. That collection will be always bigger than if you just simply say, there's a second collection today for Campaign for Human Development, be generous. I don't know what Campaign for Human Development is. Okay, tell me a little bit more about it. So I think people have a right to the proper information as to what their giving is going to support. That's our role as pastors, or we get someone in to make the announcements or whatever, but we need to be transparent. We need to be upfront. This is what we're doing. This is how it is. And this is why the parish also needs to be transparent. Once a year, for sure, you need to give some kind of a financial report to the people. And your finance council has to be very involved and has to know what's going on. And they represent the people, and they can tell the people, this is what's going on, this is what we're trying to face, and maybe this is a big issue now in the parish. We have a huge maintenance issue in the hall or whatever. Okay, you've got people, they're working on it, they're part of the parish, they own the parish, and they're transparent with others so that others can say, okay, we do need all to help.
And I think that's an important point that many of our parishioners don't always realize. They hear about it, but they don't know the purpose of it is the finance council. And if I remember right, canonically, we have to have a finance council in every parish of our diocese. And that is the check and balance, so to speak, is that, yes, it is an advisory council, but it's one we should be taking seriously as pastors to ask of our laity, give me your feedback on the best utilization of these funds so that it's not seen as just Father is making all these decisions to do whatever he wants to. But that we do have a committee of laity, business people, people financial-minded, laity who are just invested in their parish to advise us as pastors, because I'll be the first to tell people, I look at a financial report, I look at the bottom line. Is there parentheses? Is it a plus? Is it a minus? I don't always know all the details that financial report can give, but I make sure I surround myself with people who do, because that allows us then as pastors to utilize this tithing that the people are giving, these funds that are being entrusted to us, to the best utilization for our community. And I think that's very important for us to realize Father's not making a decision by himself. Archbishop's not making a decision by himself, just spur of the moment, walking in the diocese finance office saying, here's what I want you to do, give this money to go over there. He's asking people, he's getting advice all the way up throughout our church. Even the Holy Father has a committee, I would imagine, that he gets advice from on how best to live and use these financial realities of the church. And so as we come to the end of our episode today, what I invite you to reflect on is this question of tithing. This gift that we are giving of ourselves, of the finances of our church. Traditionally, it always been of the first fruits, the best that we have to give. And so I invite you to look at your own finances, talk with your spouse, work with your family, see where you are at, and see, can I get to another percentage or get close to the 5%? But then also reflecting, as Father David mentioned, that there's another 5% of charitable organizations. Are there other things that are close to my heart, to my family's heart, that can allow us to be able to give in a very beautiful way of all of those beautiful blessings that God has given? As I did in one of our other episodes, we had that verse from the Psalms, how do I repay to the Lord of the goodness he has given to me? Well, let us look at the financial gifts. It is sometimes the most tangible and visible gift that he has given to me. Out of that, how do I repay to the Lord for the good things he has done? I thank you for tuning in with us today, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode. Thank you for tuning in.